Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of our Marshall Way Network TV. And we are so glad to have you here this evening on Friday, the 13th of all days. And what I wanted to talk about today with this panel that we have here is we're going to be talking about the goal setting to achieve success in the martial arts and in life. And I want to first start off with some introductions. We have some incredible martial artists here that are with us. And if you missed the first episode, then this will be new to you. For those of you that have been with us since the first episode, we're going to do a little repeating, but it's always good to introduce those of us that are here. So starting off, we have Dr. Ronald Leach, and he is a retired dentist. That's where the doctor comes from. And his credentials include a 9th Dan in Shorin-ryu Karate, a 9th Dan in Taekwondo, a 6th Dan in Shurate, 4th Dan in Kenjutsu, in Iijutsu, and a 3rd Dan in Kyokushinkai. And he is from Branson, Missouri, and he is an instructor there at Branson Karate. And if you just want to wave out there, Dr. Leach. All right. We also have with us today Mr. Richard Osborne, Jr., and he holds an 8th degree in Taekwondo, and he is the owner and chief instructor at Next Level Sport Karate in Springfield, Missouri. Also on with us today is Mr. Sam Roach, and he holds a 1st Dan in Kyokushinkai, and he is an international student. That's how we represent him. He's currently in Iowa right now, but he has a background in travel. He travels to South Korea as well as Japan and other countries, and he brings a wealth of knowledge from what's going on in the world. And then last but definitely not least, we have Mr. Rose, and he's a 2nd degree in Taekwondo, and he is an owner and chief instructor at Peaceful Warriors Martial Arts in Newcastle, Oklahoma. And then I am your host. My name is Vishan Borich, and I hold a 5th Dan in Shorin-ryu Karate and a 5th Dan in Kyokushinkai, and I am owner and instructor at Branson Karate in Branson, Missouri. So welcome, everyone. I would like to encourage you before we get started here with our topic of the day to go ahead and click below. You'll see that below the screen is an area for you to chat and be a part of our live call today, live episode. So feel free to enter any questions you have or any great comments or ideas that you yourself have on goal setting. And as we get towards the end of the call, if there's some great questions there, we'll be happy to answer them. So we'll get started. So our first presenter today is Mr. Roach. So go ahead, Mr. Roach.
All right, thank you very much, Sensei Borich. Once again, I'm honored to be here and I'm privileged to be among such a wonderful crowd here. So today we're talking about goals, and I really like Stephen Covey. I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey and his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in one of his chapters, kind of in the prescript to that, he quoted Aristotle as saying, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit." So I think that today in America and all around the world, I think people are very goal-oriented. We have things like New Year's resolutions, we have 30-day challenges of all kinds of different things. We have all these different exercise routines and scientific studies on how to stay fit. We have all kinds of different diets and plans for people to lose weight and stay healthy. And these are all goal-oriented things. But I think that oftentimes it's good to get back to the simple things, and I think really what we're looking at when we're talking about goals is that we want some kind of a result. And I think that oftentimes when we talk about things like diets or 30-day challenges and things like that, we do them for a time and then we stop. And so the 30 days are over, and now I get to go ahead and veg on my couch and get out the chocolate and chomp down on all the chocolate. My New Year's resolution only lasts for a month, and then I'm kind of back into my old habits. But I think that ultimately, I think everyone can agree that the ultimate kind of goal for having a goal is to create a habit that you can that can enrich and that can help you in your daily life. So when we're talking about martial arts, we always talk about martial arts as being a lifestyle. It's a lifelong pursuit, as are many of the other arts. And I think that one of the best ways to start looking at what a good goal is to look at the people who came before us. Who are the successful people that we know of? I can think of a couple people: Benjamin Franklin, Steve Jobs. Ono Jiro is the sushi chef. There was a great documentary called Jiro's Dreams of Sushi that was quite good. Einstein, Andrew Carnegie are a number of successful people. All of these people had specific things that they did daily. They had routines, things that they got in the habit of doing, and they did them consistently. There was a consistency to what they did throughout their life, and that created a foundation for them to be successful, created the foundation for them to become people of good character. So a number of the people that I can think of in martial arts history, in terms of martial arts, Yamaoka Tesshu is one of the he's one of the greatest swordsmen that probably ever lived. He got up every morning and he practiced kendo from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock every morning before he continued doing whatever he was doing in his day. Master Funakoshi, he had all kinds of daily things that he did. One of his things was moderation. Moderation in eating, moderation in speaking. One of the things that Osensei Morihei Ueshiba did was he kept up a practice of kendo every day, but he also doused himself with a bucket of cold water every morning. And these seem like little things in some ways, little habits and little things that we do, but I think that when we create goals, a lot of times what we get are little habits that stick with us throughout the rest of our lives, and then we build on that. So what is a good goal? In my opinion, and looking at the example of Master Yamaoka Tesshu, for example, I would say that time period is very important. So you want to have a specific time period, whether that's a time during the day, in the morning, in the evening, or in the afternoon, or whether that is just saying, I will do this for an hour, or I will do it for 30 minutes, or 10 minutes, or 5 minutes. And then once you have a time period set up, I think it's a good idea to keep your goals simple. And by simple, I don't mean not difficult. I don't mean easy. I mean, you want them to stay simple because you want to have a clear picture of what it is that you want to achieve, and also what it is that you want to do. Of course, how you're going to get to the goal. But if you don't keep it simple and it gets too complex, there's too many ways to go through, find loopholes, and really get distracted. And then I think the last thing is that you want to be specific. Even though we're talking about being simple here, I think it's a good idea to stay specific. So Ono Jiro, the sushi chef, gets up in the morning, does exactly the same thing. He goes to the train platform and goes through the same platform every day. Now this is kind of extreme, but he's very specific. He goes to the same platform every day, and then he goes to the fish market some days. He goes the same route. He's very specific about what he does. And when he sets up the tables, he sets up the tables very neatly. He knows exactly where he wants the person to sit, where the chopsticks are, everything like that. So when we set goals, I think we want to be specific. And so if we make it too broad, if we just say, okay, I'm going to practice karate every day for 15 minutes, then the question becomes, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to practice karate? Because karate has a lot of things within it. So what specifically are you going to practice? And then the last bit that I want to talk about a little bit here is an example that a simple goal would be, for example, I'm going to run kata every day. That's a simple goal. Then after that, I put up a time period. So from 6 in the morning to 7. And then I lay down specifically what I'm going to do, a kind of pattern to follow. So bow to begin. Begin with 10 minutes of meditation, 5 minutes of stretching. Then run kata. I can do it slow or fast. I can do it outside or inside. There's room for me to move there. It's not too complex. It's simple, so I know what I want to do, but I have room to change things up a little bit if I want to. I have room to make things interesting. And then I would end with a short mokuso, or just kind of a short seated meditation, and then bow. And then that kind of seals that pattern and that routine into my day. And then I can build on that and make it a habit. So I think, to recap here, I want to repeat the quote from Aristotle, that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is an act. Is not an act, but a habit. Again, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So I think that part of our goal setting should be in the context of our entire life and what we want to achieve in our entire life. So it should have a time period. It should be simple and specific. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. That was excellent. Next up, I'd like to have Mr. Rose talk about, why should you set these goals, and specifically, why should you set them high? So, Mr. Rose, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. We
You
can
guys
hear
hear
you.
me okay? All right. First off, well said, Mr. Roach. I mean, that's one of the first things I always talk about when it comes to goal setting, is setting very specific goals, and that's what makes it kind of simple. I mean, I tell them, break it down. If you want to be a better kicker, you got to focus on one kick at a time. Make sure to keep it as simple as possible. So what I'm going to be talking about is motivation more than anything. So looking towards the next step. And that's why I always tell guys to set your goals high, set your goals big. Another important part of goal setting is being able to break down immense things into smaller pieces. I don't have the quote in front of me, but the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, there's a couple of quotes in there that kind of relate to that. There's also, Lao Tzu has some quotes that relate to that, where the wise can accomplish anything by breaking it down to those small pebbles. You can move a mountain, but you have to start with a stone. But at the same point in time, if you set your goal for one thing, then once you accomplish it, one of two things is going to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to use a cartwheel as an example. So say you've set a goal that you want to be able to do a cartwheel. That's great. So then that you work towards it, and then that one day that you manage to land it, that's the point that one of two things happens. You're either going to go, oh wow, now I want to get better at it, now I want to move on to the next step, or like a lot of people get to the point where like, oh, I did it now, so I'm going to take a week off, and then a week later they can't do it anymore. and then the training takes so much longer to be able to get the technique down, like a cartwheel, for example, just because they stopped, because they thought they had it on that first or second or third time that they landed it. So I always tell people, if you want to be able to do a cartwheel, set your heart on learning to do an aerial. It's the next step up, same exercises, same drills, but that way, once you land that cartwheel, you're already driven to the next point. You're already driven to move on to one thing more. If what you really want to do is an aerial, well, make your goal an aerial twist, or and I'm probably not going to pronounce it right, and al batito or whatever it is, the kind of reverse aerial. Set yourself some goals like that, so there's always the next stage, because some people can find it hard to remotivate once they've achieved one goal or one step of their goal to continue on. And to reach our full potential, we really have to continue on. If we stop every time we set a goal and then we quit working in that same direction, then we'll never know what our potential could be. So, if you set your goal that you want to be able to do a 360 tornado kick, and you work towards you get that 360 down, well, that's the start of a 540, but a lot of people stop at that 360. Well, why not go that extra step? So going ahead and setting your sights on the 540 instead of just the 360 will help you to keep going. And yes, it's a satisfying thing to reach that first part of your goal. Allow yourself to be satisfied, but already be looking for what's coming next. And that applies in more than just martial arts. That applies with any kind of goal, which I'll kind of get at in a minute. One of the most important things that I find when it comes to achieving your goals is setting your intentions and your heart in the right place. Make sure that it sits with your core values. So if to achieve your goal you would find yourself having to lie or to cheat or to steal, then it's not really gonna help you to work towards that goal in that way. Find another way around or readjust your goal. The thing is it's generally going to turn out to be not such a good thing and not so exciting when you accomplish it if you had to do things like that. And at the same time, along with motivation, it's very difficult to make anything happen without first setting your heart and your brain and all your intentions on it and doing it for the right reasons. So let's go back to the aerial for a second. You want to learn how to aerial. Why do you want to learn how to aerial? Just because you want to impress somebody else? Do you want to make a particular person think you're cool, or do you want to learn it for yourself? Do you want to learn it for your strength? Because if you want to learn it for yourself, you're going to be far more motivated. If you want to learn it to show off to somebody else, once you've been working at it for 2 or 3 months and you still haven't landed your first one, you're liable to lose motivation really quickly on something like that. So making sure your heart is truly in it is a big part of motivation. So you want to have your heart set in the right place. They always say, you should have your dreams, you should turn your dreams into goals, but they mean nothing without actions, and that's very, very true. But actions also mean nothing without that original goal and without the first part of it as well. So making sure that every part of yourself is lined up with your goal and that you're doing it for reasons that mean something to you. I always talk about this in business seminars and things like that, is sure, being in business is about making money, but if you're not
I think we may have lost you, Mr. Rose. So in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and head over to our next speaker. And if Mr. Rose comes back on, we'll have him jump back in. It's one of the joys of technology. Sometimes that happens. All right. Oh, I think we got him back right away, actually. Mr. Rose, you still there?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. And I totally lost my train of thought. I know I had something going, but that's okay. I'll go ahead and skip to the next part. So I'm going to give a quote really quick. So you're talking about aligning the mind with the heart and then aligning that with the body to actually make your goals happen. Because I was talking about business. If you go in business, you're usually in business to make money, but if it's not something that's important to you, it's something you're not going to belong enough. You're going to have burnout times and stuff like that to ever actually get to a point to where you're making good money, because most people that start a business don't make anything for a year, 2 years, sometimes 3 and 4 years after they first start. So it has to mean something more to you than just money. It's got to be something that you feel like you're doing for the world. So I'm going to give a quote here about having your mind in the right place. This is from the Book of the Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. This particular one was translated by Thomas Cleary, but it means a lot in this. In the practice of every way of life and every kind of work, there is a state of mind called that of the deviant. Even if you strive diligently on your chosen path day after day, if your heart is not in accord with it, then even if you think you're on a good path, from the point of view of the straight and true, this is not a genuine path. If you do not pursue a genuine path to its consummation, then a little bit of crookedness in the mind will later turn into a major warp. I read that just the other day, and I thought that was a perfect quote for what we're going to be talking about here today. So again, make sure that your goals will line up with your core values. You don't want to have to lie, cheat, and steal to get your goals. Make sure you have the right intentions and you have your heart in the right place for it. Not just to better yourself, but is it going to be something that helps others? For me personally, I found my purpose in helping others. I didn't make any money for the first couple of years my school was open. I started teaching martial arts because I wanted to give to people. I wanted to make other people's lives a little bit better. So keep that in mind when you're doing your goals. Make sure you're in the right place. And also, make sure you know your goal up front. So I'm going to talk about business for just a quick second because you make decisions differently. If you go into business and you set your goal is to just be a business that can make you enough money to get by, to stay small, easy to control, etc., that's all it's ever going to be able to be. That's all you're ever going to get to the point of. If you start with day one within your mind saying 10 years from now, I'm going to have 10 locations, I'm going to have so many employees, I'm going to do this, that, and the other, then you're going to lay out your business plan different. You're going to make decisions differently from start to finish than you would if you just wanted to barely get by. So make sure you set that goal high. If you want to start a business, all you really want is to get by, that's fine. But set your goal to not just get by, but to do extremely well. That way you're going to make decisions differently that are going to build your business faster and that are going to build the things you do faster. And it can ever thought possible. So I'm going to go ahead and end today with a quote from the Tao Te Ching. I probably didn't pronounce that right. I'm terrible with foreign languages, but Lao Tzu's famous poem, and this is verse 63. So I'm going to go ahead and end with this, and I'll let you guys reflect on this and the quote I gave from the Book of the Five Rings. Strive for the effortless, savor the savorless, exalt the low, multiply the few, requite injury with kindness, nip troubles in the bud, sow the great in the small. Difficult things of the world can only be tackled when they are easy. Big things of the world can only be achieved by attending to their small beginnings. Thus the wise never has to grapple with big things, yet he alone is capable of achieving them. He who promises lightly must be lacking in faith. He who thinks everything easy will end by finding everything difficult. Therefore the wise, who regards everything as difficult, will meet with few difficulties in the end. Thank you, guys.
All right, I think I got myself off mute. That was beautiful, Mr. Rose. Thank you so much for sharing that information. Great. I'd like to go ahead and hand this over now to Dr. Leach, and he's going to be talking to you about focus and how to focus on those goals.
Thank you, Sean. I've heard some words thrown around here today, and they were that everybody talked about, and talking about focus, motivation, and goals. And they are all closely related. In order to maintain focus, you have to have motivation. Now, I was always a self-motivator, and I think anybody out there in pursuit of or who has attained a black belt has to be a self-motivator. If you're not a self-motivator, you're not going to make it. Nobody can push somebody else into a black belt. Now, I can only tell you how I worked out my goals and motivation. And I attain the level that I attained by setting goals. And I broke these goals down into three groups: short-term goals, middle-term goals, and long-term goals. Now, for my short-term goals, I was very fortunate in having a system that was totally written down. And because of this, I was able to review before class some of the techniques, or at least part of them, and familiarize myself with them. So I had a goal of every class to learn 1, 2, maybe 3 techniques, or correct an error here, or I set a very narrow short-term goal for every class. Now that allowed me to continuously and in every class progress. And as I progressed, I would work towards my middle-term goal. And the middle-term goal was always the advancement to the next rank. So it's a matter of stacking blocks one on top of another to reach from your short-term goal to your middle-term goal. Now, if you stack enough middle-term goals, I would assume that everybody in karate has a long-term goal of reaching black belt. And if you stack enough of these rank blocks together, you will reach a black belt level. Now, at the Kohai or junior student level to Udansha level, take a black belt. Now, it's a journey. It has to be something that comes from within you. And if it doesn't, you don't make it. You just don't make it. So once you attain the black belt, then what? And you have to reassess your goals at that point. Once you attain that long-term goal, you have to reassess it. Now, as I've taught over the years, I've noticed something, and it has to do with dropout rates. And what I found out that there were three times when people tended to drop out in larger groups. One at white belt, one midterm, approximately green belt in our system, and then at black belt. Now, why is this? Well, I looked at the white belts, and I think these people just didn't think that what they were doing wasn't what they thought it was going to be. It wasn't for them, and they just decided to bail out. And that's fine. That's a good time to bail out instead of spending years and years at it and finding out you didn't like it in the first place and then stop. Also, sometimes it's just too hard for some people, and they just say, I can't do this. I don't want to put the time, I don't want to put the effort into it, and I'm gone. Now, at Greenbelt, this middle area, people drop out there, I think, because they can't see the light at the tunnel. They haven't set that long-term goal. They haven't set that medium goal. They aren't just kind of plugging along and don't see how they're ever going to reach what they were going to reach. I wondered if I would ever reach second-degree black belt in my first style. And obviously I did. But later on, at the black belt level, and this is interesting because there's a mass exodus at black belt level. And why? They set a goal. They reached that goal. They wanted to tell everybody they were black belts. They got it, and they left. And that's fine. Then that's perfectly fine if they do that. But there's a difference between holding a black belt and being a black belt. You're going to have to continue to practice if you're going to be a black belt. If you say you're a golfer and you never play golf, you are certainly not going to be a golfer. Now, above that level, there are very few people that reach master's level, and there is some attrition as we go. Life happens to people, and we as instructors have to realize that people move on, they change interests, they have a certain way of doing things in their lives, and karate is no longer part of that. And they may have had kids, and their kids are taking up so much time. This is fun. They need to do that. Maybe they drag their kids with them too. That's another side of the coin. But these people just kind of filter out slowly, and then we get a group of people that reaches this master's level. And when they reach this master's level, the attrition rate starts to slow down. If you're teaching it, and you have to be teaching it at a master's level, there's just no way that you can be a master and not teach. So the masters are making this something totally different than when they originally started, because karate now, as you progress, becomes a way of life. And it's something that happens every day in your life, and something that you do every day in your life. I think this was alluded to first, and how the person maintained this same progression of lifestyle and worked out every day from 6 a.m. to 3 a.m. That's a lot of workout. And most people don't have that kind of time. So what this process does is to allow a person to set a learning curve in which they go up and continue to climb up the belts and reach their goals. But once you reach that, you need to reassess. You need to set new goals. You need to set a higher goal and decide what that is going to be, and stick to that. And then once you set that higher goal, you need to set those middle term goals about how you're going to get there. And then for each middle term, you need to set those short term goals and how you're going to break down each one of those middle term goals and make your effort effective. So that's about all I have. So I'll turn that back over to you, Master Boric, and we can have it.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I appreciate your insight on this. So next up, I'd like to have Mr. Osborne share how he uses goal setting in his martial arts school. He had some brilliant things that he's doing currently, and this might apply to you if you're an instructor, and it might inspire you too if you're a student. So go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Am I good? All right, sounds good. Well, definitely I am the least qualified guy to finish up this call, because everybody before me has done an excellent job of explaining what goals are and how to achieve those goals and what would you perceive as a goal. So what I want to do is, it's not me. As far as the system, what we use in our school, I cannot take credit for the system. I've learned the system from other instructors. So now what I want to do is kind of wrap this up and say, as an instructor, how do we use our systems? How do we adapt our systems? And what are some tools to able to make our students be able to achieve those goals, to help with retention, to keep their attention, to keep them in class, to keep them achieving? And there is going to be a dropout rate, but maybe we can help reduce that rate, and maybe we can get some students that may have dropped out previously in a short amount of time, be able to stay and hang on later and catch that bug and be able to finish up until the end of stay lifetime martial artists. So these are the things that are tools that we can use as instructors. And when I say instructors, and I'm saying this as a generalization, whether you're a school that has 300 students, and if you've got 300 students, you probably already have some tools in place. And some of us that are new instructors or older instructors, we've got 5, 10 students, and maybe we have a hard time with retention. And these are some of the tools and things that we can do to help keep these students engaged, keep them involved, and keep them progressing through the belt ranks and keep them learning. And again, I mentioned a couple of times, everybody has a different learning curve. Everybody is so different on what they can do. Some people take martial arts for so many different reasons. It's hard to hone in on one person. You got to generalize everything, but everybody progresses at a different level. So you've got to have ways for everybody moving along at the same time, but at the same time having a goal that's attainable for somebody that's less skilled or less talented than another person, because some people are going to achieve faster than the others. Now, I want to go and backtrack for some of you that weren't on the first episode, and for some of you that are maybe younger instructors, and some of you that are older instructors that have been around a long time. You know, a lot of the curriculum and the way we have changed things, again, this is all repetitive here, but I just want to go back and make sure that we're all on the same page. You know, this kind of started the trend of how we teach today and how we do things as far as goals. Started back in the 80s. Again, when I talked before previously, you know, we had movies coming out. We have different students coming into our fold. Now, a lot more children are flooding into schools. So the way that we teach already started to make a trend and change. The 80s and 90s, again, I've mentioned this before, it was kind of a mirror image, but that's when we started seeing a lot of youth. So our curriculums were already changing and adapting to having these types of students. Now, fast forward to today's world. A lot of schools, and I'm not saying every school, but a lot of schools now are more children-based. We have a lot more youth, and sometimes we have adults. You know, it's not a bad thing or a negative thing, but we've lost a lot of our 18 to 30-year-olds to the MMA field, which is great because that's the avenue that they're choosing to want to go to. But it seems a lot of our schools are more youth-oriented. So here's a few tools for you to be able to achieve that. Like I said, whether you're a school at a rec center, maybe you teach out of your garage, maybe you have a standalone location. These are things that anybody can use, and I cannot take credit for this. There's other martial arts around me that have shown me this system and showed me how to do this, and I'm still adapting this system today to be able to keep people engaged and keep them oriented. One of the best things in the world of martial arts was the invention of electrical tape. Okay? You may find that funny, but that is one of the best tools that I have found. I started teaching for my father back in the early 90s, and we didn't have this when we first started teaching. And we would have retention, and we would have kids come into our class. You know, kids starting out at age 4 years old, some at 3 years old. I mean, that is the low age of students coming in. So what I'm talking about as far as electrical tape is what we call our striping system. What we've done is we've taken our system, and again, this is adaptable to any system out there. You know, one of the systems I've seen it done with, which I think is a very complex system, and I have utmost respect for it, but there are so many moves, would be a Kempo system. Their forms are so long. There's so many movements in those forms. You know, you get a 5, 6, 7-year-old trying to adapt to that. It takes a while to be able to learn those moves and those patterns to be able to do that and be able to stay with the class and keep progressing. So the striping system, and here's what we've done in my school. Now, again, this could be adapted to anything that you've done with your school. You just have to look at it. Mr. Leach was talking about writing things down, or Dr. Leach was talking about writing things down. That is an excellent thing. If you don't have your curriculum wrote down, you've got to write it down. You've got to get some kind of manual together, get it on paper, find a way to get it wrote down. That way the students can visualize it and see what the progress is. The next thing is actually breaking down that curriculum into different sections. Now here's how we do it with me. This may not translate to you. You can adapt it however you want to. Let's say a white belt beginner level comes into my school. We have 4 breakdowns as far as what our belt goes all the way to black belt. Again, you still want to show them the progress of what they're going to as far as black belt is, but let's just start with white belt. And let's start with the first stripe. The first thing that we do is we show them our hand techniques. We show them how to stand in a fighting stance. We show them how to punch. There's about 6 to 8 different things we want our white belts to learn within the first 30 days of practicing with us. And at the end of that 30 days, they're able to show those techniques to us where they're just hands, they're just striking, they're just stances, they're blocks, low block, middle block, high block, all basic blocks with us. And at the end of that, we'll do a mini in-house testing, and they'll get their first strike. Now, we test about every 3 months. So on the 3rd month, they're usually picking things up pretty quick. So we're able to do 2 stripes at that last month to be able to get them. We have a 4-stripe system. So the first one's hand techniques. Next one is kicking techniques or stances. The third one is our self-defense. So if you do 1-steps in Taekwondo or you have self-defense techniques. Then the last one is patterns. For those of us that are still doing patterns and you still have patterns in your system, and it may be if you went to a non-pattern system, which I know I've seen some schools go to, you maybe have a configuration as far as a fighting system that you want somebody to memorize. So those are the 4 breakdowns as far as what we have. And that progresses from belt. We go white, yellow, green, blue, brown, and then black. We always visualize at the end. Again, going back to kids, this is a technology age. And these kids are going to have kids. So in 10, 15, 20 years from now, this system, again, is going to adapt again to what those kids are. Kids right now, for the most part, I don't want to group all kids together, but they have a hard time focusing. And so if you take this system and you take it and you break it down to their level, let's get this first stripe. Let's get this one out of the way. Let's break this down into 4 levels, and then we'll work on that next belt. Because when you get a child, or you get, you know what, and we could probably even talk about adults with this. When they see the progress, with me it takes about 3 or 4 years to get a black belt in my system. So if they see the end goal and they're like, golly, 3 or 4 years to get a black belt, you want to show them the end of the path. Okay? Yes, we're trying to get to a black belt. We're trying to achieve something here at the end. But right now, let's just focus on this. And that's what our striping system does. We make sure we can break it down now, give them something to obtain that is very obtainable. Even for a 4-year-old, I can show them basic techniques, break it down into 4 sections, and that person can be ready to go to test for a belt, which has worked in my system. I've taken 4-year-olds, and they're already learning the basics that I would teach in my beginners classes, but the way we have broke it down has made it simple and easy for them, and also keeping their attention. There's video games, there's other sports, or there's other avenues for kids to get their attention. And what this does is it makes them goal-oriented to where the goal is right in front of them. You know, if you give a kid a piece of candy, you can't put it out too far because they won't want to reach for it. And that's just children for today. There's so much activity going on. There's so many things that can distract them or get them off the path. And this system helps kind of wrangle that in. And again, it can be used for adults too. If you've got adults that they think it's too long to be a black belt, then let's break down the system. Let's make it simpler for them, and let's be able to move them. You don't have to adapt your system. All you're doing is trying to make your system into sections and going, okay, we're going to learn this section. We're still working on this other stuff, but let's get this down first. Then we can get this down. Then we can get this down. Boom, we're off to the next belt. And before you know it, somebody's, again, Dr. Leach is saying, we're at an intermediate level, and they've looked up and they don't realize they're already at an intermediate level, and they're going with our programs or whatever program you're at with, you know, a year spent in the program, and they don't realize what time is flying by. So writing down your curriculum, breaking down your curriculum into sections, awarding those sections for being somebody to be able to achieve those sections and be able to stripe them and test them and be able to show them their progress. Again, this is a visual age. Everything, like we're doing right now, this is a visual age. Everybody wants to see their progress. And one tool to do this, no matter what your belting system is, you can buy electrical tape at Lowe's or Home Depot, and now you can show people progress. Show them the goals right now that they're able to achieve. The last thing that I do, something very simple. Now, some of us may not have this luxury. If we're working in a rec center, we may not be able to display our belts. Again, write down your curriculum, stripe your belts to help out. And again, these are tools. I don't want to say that you have to do these things. But these are things that can help you. The other thing is your belt display. When I came up as a martial artist, there was nowhere in our room that we had a belt display to even show them what the progress of the belt was. You know, if you write down your system and you show the belt progression, and if you're able to display what your belts are, you're showing them what the starting is and what the end goal is, but you're at least getting a visual of where to go. Again, a visual aid. And I think if you do some of these things, you take some of these tools, it will help you become a better instructor and help with retention for those of us that are in the commercial martial arts business, but it'll keep people engaged. You know, the best thing that you've ever seen is when a 5-year-old gets a stripe, a piece of electrical tape on their belt, and it's all over Facebook because they got a stripe on their belt because they learned a front kick and a front stance. But to that child, that means the world to them. And sometimes it's adults too. We work all day long for 40 hours, and they come to do martial arts as relief, and maybe they're stuck in a rut in life, and now they've achieved something as small and meaningless to us maybe as a stripe. That means the world to somebody else. So it's the small things, breaking down our goals, making those goals achievable for everybody, no matter the age. And I think if you do those things, it'll help you out in the long run. That's my spiel.
All right, can you guys hear me? Great. Mr. Osborne, that was great. I hope for those of you that are watching the show, whether it's the live version or you're watching this as a recording, I hope you take some notes, because these are some golden nuggets that, these people are, everyone here on this panel is very experienced. Every one of us are black belts. Some of us have multiple black belts. And I think it's so important, if you are just starting your journey in the martial arts, or if you're an instructor or you're planning on becoming an instructor at some point. These are some things that can really help you. And one of the things I wanted to leave us with today is I wanted to talk about the overall, the big picture of everything that everyone said. And really it comes down to this. It comes down to starting with why. Okay, so anything that you want to do in your life, anything, be it the martial arts, be it getting the next stripe, being, making it to black belt, being losing weight, or getting better fitness or flexibility, it starts at the very beginning with why. Why do you want to achieve that? Okay, there's a great book that's out there. It's by a gentleman by the name of Simon Sinek, and that's S-I-N-E-K, and the book is actually called Start With Why. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I don't get any royalties from it. I didn't write it, but it is a really good book. And the reason that it's good is because there's this concept of the golden circle when it comes to life and when it comes to goal setting. And that golden circle is this. Think of it as a bullseye, and in the center of that bullseye is why. The next layer is how. And the next layer is what. Okay? Most people, and businesses for that matter, they start from the outside in. They go from what they want to do to how they're going to do it, and then why they're going to do it. When you start from the outside in on that bullseye, what happens is that you lose your motivation really, really quickly. Okay, you may have the greatest idea. This comes back to the whole idea of New Year's resolutions. You set your resolution, that's what you're going to do, and then you figure out, okay, let's just take weight loss. That's something that's really popular with a lot of folks. You say, okay, I'm going to lose weight. Okay, then you say, how you're going to do it. You're going to exercise, you're going to diet, whatever it is. And then you say why. Maybe your why is so that you can, look really good come spring break, right, when you're at the beach. So really what I'm suggesting is the other way around. Instead of setting the goal and talking about how you're going to do it, start in the middle of that bullseye with why do you want this? Why do you want this for your life? So a good example, let's say that you on this call are not yet a black belt, and you really have a desire to be a black belt. Why do you want to be a black belt? Why is this important to you? And specifically, and I wrote some notes down, and I took notes from everybody here on the call, by the way, this is great. When you're thinking about that, what exactly is it about the black belt that's going to improve your life or the life of others? And if you don't know, in my opinion, don't even start, because you really have to have a really clean reason why before everything else falls into place. And once you know in your heart why you want that, and I'll just share my own why. My own why as to why I originally wanted my black belt is because I wanted to feel powerful, that I had the self-confidence to, protect my family and to defend myself. That was my why. And it was something I always wanted to do too. I mean, that's really the big part of it. I always wanted to do it. And once I had the why, then it was, okay, how? How am I going to get there? Well, I'm going to take some form of martial arts. And then it was, well, what form? So then it goes out, inside out. What form am I going to take? And then, where, and, how often am I going to go to class, and when am I going to practice? All the other aspects of the goal setting start in that bullseye with why. And once you have that, and you've gotten that very, very clear in your head and your mind, everything else becomes so much easier to be motivated with. And, all of these tips that everybody says, these are wonderful, and, I'd write those down. But think in your head why you want to achieve something, and it'll happen. And specifically, I want to say that's how this show happened too. And if, for those of you who are watching it, you're helping fulfill a vision, a why that I had, and that all of these folks that are on this call have joined me in that vision. And that vision is to share the depth of the martial arts, because it's not just punching and kicking and learning how to break boards and things like that, is it, guys? Everybody here knows that it's not just that. It's really about your why, your purpose, your passion, your life. It's about leaving this world a better place than when you came into it. And if in some small way that this program and these people that are on this call can leave you in a better place in your life and equip you with the tools to achieve your own purpose, then this has succeeded. So I hope that this has inspired you. I hope that what you've learned from the folks here has inspired you. And with that, I'm going to check really quick and see if we have any questions from our audience. I just want to remind you that at any point, if you're watching the live show, you can actually comment below, and if there's questions, then you too can be a part of our presentation. And I don't see any new questions that have come through recently. Is there anything that anyone would like to follow up? Did you miss saying? If so, just unmute. We've got about 10 more minutes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Dr. Leach, you're on.
Okay. I'm on. All right. As we continue to progress in our system, I told you that we had the great advantage of having everything written down. Our system had everything written out from 10th Q all the way through 6th degree black belt, written out. Testable information all the way through. Now, as we built this column of colored belts to reach black belt, we became proficient in what we considered the basics of our system. When we reached black belt, our system expanded. And the reason why is because I had a very wise instructor in Harold Meade. And it was this. At 6th degree black, well, even before that, because he wanted us to start taking other arts. And we started at 6th degree black, we had to take another art. If you're going to reach 7th degree black, you have to be a black belt in that art, and you have to be taking a third art. And if you were going to reach 8th degree black, you had to have a 2nd degree black belt in the second art, and a 1st degree black belt in your third art. He encouraged us to go out and encouraged us to learn, and he had a lot of information to teach us, and he did. And this was an excellent system for us to grow up in. And like I said, our knowledge base just exploded. We have trained outside of our system a lot of people in the years, and we've met a lot of people throughout the country, and I found this very enlightening. We've hooked up with some of the greatest martial artists in the country, and people, they're not the ones you hear about. They're not the ones that are in Black Belt magazine, and they're not the ones that are in catalogs. These people don't function that way. But there's some excellent martial artists out there, and there's a lot to learn. So if you're in a system that doesn't want you to take anything outside, or doesn't have anything past 1st degree black belt, you need to look for something in order to grow. Then you can set new goals for yourself. Okay, I'll turn. I think Corey was ready. I'll turn it over to you, Corey.
Hey guys, I was just going to add one small little piece to what Master Osborne Jr. was saying, another little tip when it comes to stripes. We've done striping for a very long time, kids and adults, and we have at this school, and we have a pretty even mix. Now, for the longest, black electrical tape until about a year ago, because it gets to the point where so-and-so misses for a month, or so-and-so is on vacation for a week, or whatever. Now, when you're pretty small, or you're under 30 or 40 students, those single color stripes work okay. So it's like, okay, you have to get this down first. You'll test for this, then you go to this. But then once you get more people, and you're getting up to 50, 60, 70 students, it gets to a point where you'll have people who, like I said, have been gone for a week or something like that. So the whole class is working on something specific, let's say footwork, and they haven't done their handwork part. So one of the beautiful things about that, electrical tape comes in tons of colors. So that way they don't have to get their stripes in a row, as in first stripe is for this, second stripe is for this. The colors can be something symbolic. So, for example, in our curriculum, which we actually wrote down, and I have it in a large book that's about 400 pages that we give to all of our advanced ranks. When they hit the advanced 3 belts, they get it to help them review with all their forms and a protocol manual and all that. Outside of that, there's a couple sitting on the table so people can read it and take a look through what they need to know. But what we do is you get your first stripe for your sparring and your striking. We use red for that. Our second stripe we use is green. We do green for grappling and groundwork. Our third stripe is blue. We use that for joint lock and non-aggressive self-defense. And our last stripe, our black stripe, is for our traditional form and kata. But that way, using different colors, if so-and-so misses through most of the sparring time, then they can go ahead and get their grappling stripe and come back to the sparring stripe later. That was all I was going to add to that, is electrical tape comes in a lot of colors.
There is.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, there is something that I would want to add that Dr. Leach was talking about this, and it really jogged my memory. I think that there are a lot of people who may find themselves in a position where they want to find a better school where they don't have the examples. And I think that a key part of the motivation factor is having the example of someone who has gone that path, someone who has achieved those goals, and being able to look at that and see in a concrete way, this is what I can do, and this is what I can become. So, and sometimes we don't have those kinds of examples around us, but books are a tremendous source of knowledge and also of examples. People who have who began these martial arts, and people who really were I'm going to use the word trailblazers for not only the popularization but also the evolution of martial arts as we know them today. And I think that on this panel we have a great group of examples, people who have achieved those goals and who are still striving to achieve more, greater goals, and to help other people achieve their own goals. But I think that example is a very crucial part of understanding what kind of goals we need to have and having the motivation to continue that. So all the people out there who are instructors, I applaud you very much. And I thank you, because I think that the people that I had who were examples in my life, including Sensei Boric here, that it's really made a huge impact on me, and I hope that we can all make a great difference in the lives of our students with the example that we set.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Appreciate that. Well, we are just about here at the top of the hour, and I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I appreciate all of our panelists here for being on the call, and thank you for watching episode 2. And we will be having our next episode 2 weeks from now. We will be announcing the exact date, but I will tell you we do have a topic already selected for the next episode, and that is how to practice and train effectively to generate massive success in the martial arts. So I hope you'll join us for episode 3. Check your email for the exact dates and times on that. And as always, if you have any comments, we welcome your emails and comments in our comment box. Make it a wonderful evening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, everyone.